So it's been a couple of months since the latest Omni Garage video, so there's been a lot going on. We've been incredibly busy on some personal, home and work projects, and we're looking forward to getting back to a normal schedule, hopefully in the not too distant future. But by now you will have seen the title of this video. It's time for me to part with my 2019 WRX STi, and I'd love to talk you guys through some of the thought process around that sale, what I've liked about this car, what I haven't. And today, normally what we would do is Glenn and I, we'd walk around the car and we'd probably have a bit more of a conversation. He's actually away traveling this weekend, so I've got my wife behind the camera, so it'll be a little bit more of me talking, but I'm sure in the coming weeks, in one of our upcoming wash and talks, we'll talk a little bit more in depth around the thought process in selling this and moving on to the next car in the channel. So when I originally bought this car, I was commuting. So I was doing about 90 kilometers, about 55 miles every day, and I wanted something fun to obviously make that commute a bit more enjoyable. Now, the way the world is with COVID, I'm working from home. This car pretty much sits in the garage, and I think I've averaged about 80 kilometers a week over the past 12 months. Although in the 18 months of ownership, I have put just a shade over 20,000 kilometers on it. So I feel like I'm very well experienced with this vehicle now, and I can talk through some of the pros and cons of owning the latest generation STi. So if I take you right back to the beginning and are really transparent, when this vehicle was originally advertised, it had a price of $55,990. I managed to talk the dealership down at the time and negotiated to $53,000. Now, these cars are notorious for holding their resale values. So I have entered into an agreement to sell this. We're on our way to drop it off today, and the sale price is $53,500. So what's quite amazing for me is that I've owned this vehicle for 20,000 kilometers for 18 months, and I haven't lost any money on it because I've never had that with a vehicle before. I lose money on every single vehicle purchase and sale that I've ever done. Why am I selling this? Well, there is a new car coming to the channel soon, and really, just for me, I felt like my time with this car was done. You know, I put my 20,000 kilometers on it. I've had a bit of fun with it. Obviously, one of the things that's impacting on the decision is this is the current generation of the STi. However, the new generation, which is going to be based on the FA engines rather than the EJ, is going to be announced at the New York Motor Show next month. So a little bit of that's impacting on my decision process around this. I think that these will retain their value really well in the future, but I do think that there's probably going to be at least a temporary price hit to these, maybe over the next 12 to 18 months as we approach the release of that new WRX. The STi model will be a little bit further down the track, but an opportunity presented itself right now. I thought I may as well take it, make a little bit of money in the process, and move on to the next vehicle. We've obviously had a few videos on the channel where I have talked about the pros and cons of the ownership of this. We had a 10,000 kilometer update when I hit that, so I've done double that now in the car, and I don't think my views changed too drastically on this. Look, I think with the current generation STi, you have to go premium package. If you're buying this car, you're not having the wing, you're not having the sunroof, the upgraded audio, some of the bits and pieces in the interior, I think you miss out on quite a few pros of owning this vehicle. When I think about some of the things that I've enjoyed driving this car, it definitely comes down to, primarily for me, just the raw driving experience you get. So that 6-speed manual transmission, absolutely fantastic. The DCCD, so the driver controlled center differential, I haven't put it to its full potential in my ownership experience. This car's remained on the road, haven't taken it off-road or on the snow, but obviously that is one of the draw cards of owning a vehicle like this. There's not too many cars around like this that you can buy anymore. When I say like this, it's that raw driving experience. A manual transmission, that to me is one of the major draw cards and why you want to go out and buy one of these vehicles. I think the interior of this vehicle is absolutely fantastic. Look, some may say it's cheap. I think with this premium model, some of the upgrades you get, you know, the full leather seats, the sunroof, really make this an enjoyable place to spend time in the interior. You've obviously got the head unit, which has Apple CarPlay, which I have really enjoyed. And the heated seats, I think that adds a really nice touch, especially driving this car in winter. I've also enjoyed the learning experience that having this car has brought with it. So for me, that has been doing my first oil changes on a vehicle, changing air filters, doing the exhaust. I've obviously put this back to stock here for the sale of the vehicle, and the install of the exhaust took me probably about 2 hours. I managed to do it without any jacks in about the space of 20-25 minutes the other night. So I think that this has brought me a long way on my journey to start learning more about cars. And I think above all else, the way this car looks is what made me initially fall in love with it, and has kept me turning my head over my shoulder every time I park it. I think just the combination of the wide body lines on here, you've got almost a wide body look without having an additional kit on it. I love the wing, the 19-inch black wheels. This is a fantastic looking car, and I think the looks of this vehicle is one of the things I'm going to miss the most. So you don't get the performance, the raw driving experience, and also the looks of this vehicle without it coming with some cons. Obviously fuel economy, you don't buy a car like this for its fuel economy, but just for argument's sake, when I was commuting in this, it was fairly reasonable. It was sitting about the 8 to 8.5 litres per 100 kilometres. More recently, driving around town, this has dropped, and I'm probably getting, it's probably about 11 to 12 litres per 100 kilometres. So the tank on this car is now running me about 140 New Zealand dollars and is not quite going 380, 390 kilometres. So that's obviously a draw card if you're buying this car to drive around town. A couple of other cons that I found with it is some of the intricacies around just the way you enter the car. So we've covered this before, but when I approach the vehicle with the key in my pocket, this door here will unlock. It doesn't unlock any of the other doors around the vehicle. I've got to open the door and manually unlock it, or reach into my pocket or my bag and double click the key. Now before you comment and tell me you can change this on some of the vehicles overseas, it's not an option on these vehicles in New Zealand. So you can't go into the vehicle settings and manually change that. It is incredibly frustrating, especially when I've got my daughter, my wife, friend standing around the other side in the rain. I open the door, I'm sheltered, I'm in there, and they're waiting for me to unlock it, which is very, very frustrating. Another thing that I found frustrating on this car, although they look absolutely fantastic, these 19-inch wheels are an absolute nightmare to clean because of the spokes on there, and I'm not going to count it because last time I tried to count spokes on the channel I failed miserably, but those are an absolute pain to clean. Even ceramic coated, they're not particularly easy, so I think that's one of the things to be aware of if you're buying this vehicle. Don't think it's going to be an easy process to wash it, because those 19s in combination with some of the body lines in here, your really wide side skirts, your wing, it is a bit of a pain to clean. You do need to allow a little bit of extra time and care, especially going through the drying process. So another thing I found difficult with this car is the boot, and namely what I can actually fit in there because of the subwoofer that we've got on the premium model. Now Subaru don't offer this generation STi in a hatchback form like some of the older generations, and what that means is that if you're wanting to carry around luggage or larger items in your boot, you're going to be really restricted, mainly restricted on the fact that you've got your deck lid here and you've got your subwoofer sitting in there, which actually comes down, encroaching on some of the space that you've got available to use in your boot. The seats do fold flat, so laying long objects in here, you know, if you're carting around, you know, things like golf clubs, or you're trying to put some, I don't know, wood in there, you've got no problem, small items. But even loading suitcases in here, you're not really going to fit an awful lot because of that. And look, that's not a Subaru problem. I think that's just what you've got to come to expect with a sedan. But the fact that Subaru didn't offer this as a wagon option really can limit what you can take around in this vehicle. Something that I think you could argue is either a pro or a con depending on who you ask. My wife would say it's a con, I would say it's a pro, is just the raw driving experience of this car. She thinks it's difficult to drive and very harsh, and yeah, it is. It's got a harsh suspension, the seats aren't particularly soft, so you do feel every bump in the road, but I think that that's just something that you come to expect with a car like this. That's one of the reasons you buy it. You want to be able to feel the road, you want that driving feedback in the steering wheel, you buy it for the manual transmission, so in my mind, that's a pro. In her mind, it's a con. I'm looking forward to having a slightly more comfortable vehicle as the next daily driver. Something else to note on this car is the interior noise is not very well insulated. So when you are driving, you're going to hear one of two things. So with the stock exhaust, which I've put back on here, you hear a lot of road noise, a lot of wind noise. You cannot hear the stock exhaust on this car. When I did put a Remark axle back delete on, I unlocked some of the sound of that EJ engine, which I really enjoyed. However, you really do hear the noise of that exhaust, and it makes it difficult to have conversations in the car. And I think that's due to a lack of insulation, sound insulation or sound deadening in the doors. There's not a lot of it that can be found in this car, which is why it is quite common to find people sound insulating their cars. You know, when you are up at highway speeds, whether you have an exhaust on it or not, it's going to be very difficult to hold conversations with a passenger. If you're driving around town, hey, you know, 50, 60 kilometers an hour, it's a lot more bearable. It's going to turn heads, you're gonna get people looking at you as you drive around. It does draw a lot of attention, but that's just because of the car it is. They're relatively rare, the way it looks is fantastic. I've really enjoyed my time with this car, and I can't wait to take you guys along the journey of the next car on the channel. We should have that coming up soon.